Justin Williams here, and you guys are watching another episode of Dirt Time Adventures. And today we are looking at the Pathfinder Phase 1 system, looking at Block 9, talking about plants. We're going to break this up into two parts. Part 1 will be plants, Part 2 will be animals. And I'm starting to come to an end of this Pathfinder series. I'm kind of excited to begin shooting some new videos on different topics. But at the same time, I'm kind of discouraged because I've gained a wealth of knowledge and I've really enjoyed the heck out of it. So I'm really excited. I do want to, before we get into plants, make sure you're very clear on this. I am not an expert on plants, okay? So take everything you watch in this video today with a grain of salt, because all I'm simply doing is going to be showing you some plants that I have here on the property and showing you what I think they are. Do not go out and eat them or use them for medicine until you've had adequate training, proper training. I am not responsible for your puke fest because you go and eat something you shouldn't, okay? So watch this video at your own risk, and hopefully you can at least see some of the plant life that I have growing around here. What I am using though for my guide is a good old-fashioned Peterson's Field Guide, Wild Edibles. People will tell you this isn't your best resource. There are better books out there, but this is what I'm using. I'm using my good old trusty field guide with all my research, okay? And so these are what I'm using. I'll probably use a little bit of internet as well. And I want to challenge you guys and encourage you to check out my First Earth video playlist, because while I was at First Earth, I did a plant walk with Bo Brown, and so be sure to check that out. Also, I had a little bit of help from Joshua Hamlin at Sigma 3, who was gracious enough to look at some of my pictures that I sent him to help me identify some of them. Once again, it is February, late February. I mean, it's about to be March any day, and we're starting to see some unusual seasonal high temperatures. So we got a lot of young growth coming out that usually wouldn't come out this time of year. So we're seeing a lot of new sprouts, and so which makes it very hard to identify. And this is not the season to go out and do plant identification, and I would love to do it in the spring, but I need to bust out the Pathfinder system so I can move on to my Sigma 3 training coming up in April. So let's look at some plants. So what we have here is what I believe to be the start of purple dead nettle, which part of the plant system is to name 8 plants that are edible. And purple dead nettle is one of my 8 that I have listed, and it hasn't flowered yet, but from looking at the leaves, the stem structure, and how some of it looks here, see if I can get that to focus in there. Probably not. But anyways, I believe this to be purple dead nettle. And as you can see here, this is Acorn, another one of my plants. This is what might be left over from the season and what the squirrels haven't found yet. And acorn's not necessarily a plant, but it comes from a plant and a tree, which is this beautiful oak tree. So all around me I have this beautiful wild onion plant that's just growing all over the place, and got some various other plants growing nearby. But with wild onion you have to be careful because there are some poisonous lookalikes. But what you're looking for is that real oniony smell. It's super strong when you begin to break it down, and you'll smell that strong wild onion smell. Also, if you dig down into the root system, what are you doing, Bailey? You ain't coming to eat my onion, are you? Oh, I broke off. Oh, there, I got it. These wild onions, you'll have that onion there at the end you can eat. Beautiful plant, and a great wild edible if you can properly identify it. This one here is your common dandelion. It's not quite developed yet. That flower still looks like it's budding, but you can tell by the leaf design and the flower there that it is a dandelion that's in its early stages. And I'll show a mature, I'll try to show some mature plants along with these, but your typical dandelion stalk, and it just hasn't budded yet. It'll bud out and make your traditional dandelion. And these are also edible and good for a light yellow dye. This next plant right here I believe to be a very young winter cress. It has the larger lily pad looking piece towards the top, followed by two little lily pads below it. And I'm not 100% certain, but pretty confident this is your winter cress. So this little beautiful green patch right here is made up of a couple different plants. One is edible, the other is questionable. Okay, this actual area that I'm in right now was a hot spot for my favorite wild edible, which is wood sorrel. And so I'll show the picture right here of wood sorrel, and it's got a beautiful lemony flavor to it. But what I have here is not wood sorrel. It actually has three looking plants here. It's got your typical clover, which is a great easy wild edible. Everybody should know what a clover looks like. As kids, you'd look for the 4-leaf clovers. It's got clover in it. It's got what looks to be a member of the carrot family, and this is the one I definitely would not eat. And I'll show you a full patch of it here in just a second, but it looks like a carrot end, and definitely wouldn't eat that. There's a lot of I wouldn't say a lot, but there are definitely some poisonous lookalikes for the carrot. And then in this batch here as well is more purple dead nettle, little sprigs of purple dead nettle, and this one even has the purple color to it that you'll find on the flower heads. Alright, so here's a good patch of that carrot looking stuff that I would not recommend eating unless you are confident and able to identify it. And I'll get you a close-up on it here. And looks like a wild carrot variation, but definitely there's some lookalikes out there I would not eat unless you were 100% confident in them, because that stuff could ruin your day real quick if you don't know what you're eating. So what we have here is a late winter prickly pear cactus. As you can see, it's browned and starting to look not so appetizing, but in the whenever this fruit here on it is prime, then it's rather delicious. It's great edible. It's gonna have, from what I understand, it's gonna have sugars in it. And you got to be real careful because this thing will poke the crap out of you. But you have the little fruit on it that when they're ripe and in season, that are really good to eat. So the first part of this video, I more or less wanted to show you a few of the diverse plants that are in my area around my base camp. And there's numerous other plants that still are need to be identified, but those are just some of the ones that I kind of had an idea what they were, and was able to look at my Peterson's Field Guide to try to compare, and I think I did pretty good on those. Be sure to comment in the section below if you need them, if there's any corrections that need to be made to this, and I'll be sure to look at that and read it and check that out. So part of Block 9 is to list 8 wild edibles. You're supposed to talk about their habitat, how to harvest them, and the preparation for them. Now, the habitat that we found most of these plants was in a wood line with a thick forest and a little meadow clearing just to the outside of it is where I found most of these plants. Each plant is going to have a different habitat, so be sure to research it, and you're going to harvest them each differently. But for the most part, you're looking to use the leaves or the flower heads, and this time of year it's mainly going to be the flower heads. It's only the wild onion and various other ones that you'll actually dig up the root or the bulb of the plant. So the plants I chose was Dandelion, and everyone's pretty familiar with it. It's edible. The whole thing can be pretty much eaten. Acorns from the oak tree, and you're going to pretty much break them down and remove the tannins before you eat them and make a flour out of them. Wild onion, once again, I'd be careful with the wild onion because there are some lookalikes. Know what you're looking at, and you can eat the wild animal or the wild onion, the bulb and the leaves, and you can chop it up like green onions for the top and eat the white one whole just like it is. There's purslane, which the stems and leaves are edible, and cleavers is another one that's real common for most people, and it's also known as bed straw, and you can eat the leaves and stems on it as well. Chickweed is one that most people are familiar with, and grows in abundance. It's not quite around here that I've found at this site, but I've seen it other places, and you can eat the leaves, stems, and the flowers from the chickweed. Wood sorrel, like I said, is my favorite. Looks like a clover, but it's got little hearts instead of clovers, and it's kind of like the violet. It's got little single heart leaves instead of the little clover heart leaves. And then the wood sorrel you can eat the leaves, the flowers, and the seed pods. The little seed pods that come off of them, the little flower heads that haven't developed yet, are like super power punch of greatness. And then purple dead nettle. I don't personally like purple dead nettle. I think it's really bitter, but it is edible year round, and you only really want to eat the leaves. Okay, the leaves are what you're looking to eat for dead nettle. There's also winter cress, which we talked about today. You can do curly dock, watercress. Now with watercress, you want to make sure you eat the leaves above the water line. Don't eat the ones underneath it unless you're going to boil them and cook them. Prickly pear cactus, and then pigweed, and just there's all kinds. Henbit, creeping Charlie. That's one my buddy Josh Ailman told me to do some research on. But creeping Charlie, also known as ground ivy, is a great winter edible. All right, so moving on to medicinal plants. Medicinal plants, I'm not going to do a walkabout with it because I've already kind of covered that in the first aid series. So if you want to go back in Pathfinder, my Pathfinder system, and look at the first aid series, it is trying to get you I believe it's all in the self-aid series in block 3 that you would find that video system on the medicinal plants. And I mainly covered plantain, and I may have talked about yarrow and curly dock. But the 8 medicinal plants that I researched was plantain. I researched mullen, which I will show you over here in just a second. Yarrow, mint, jewelweed, milkweed, goldenrod, and cattail. And those are the ones that I researched for medicinal. And then in the original Pathfinder system, it also added in charcoal, which I added to my list as well. And so those are the plants. Now, so here we have mullen, which is one of the medicinal plants, and it's actually nature's mucinex and nature's toilet paper. Who would have thought that the same plant could be used for toilet paper and mucinex? But you could take these leaves and dry them out to make a tea, or you could use them whole like this but it's I think it's a 1-to-4 ratio. So if you dry it out, you can use 1 to, where if you do it dry or not dried, it's 4 leaves. So you do a 1-to-4 ratio is some of the stuff that I was researching. So that could be inaccurate. Be sure to comment in the comment section. Let me know what you think. But what you would do, part of the this block 9 is to do an infusion and a decoction. And so that's what I want to talk to you guys about next. And so we'll take one of these plants, these leaves here, and give you a close-up of it. And so it's real soft and fluffy. It's so fluffy! And so for an infusion or a decoction, there's really not a whole lot of difference in the process, other than with the decoction, you're leaving the leaf or the plant material on continuous heat. And so whereas with an infusion, you would take your leaf, like I said, it's a 4-to-1 or 3-to-1 ratio. In my notes here I have 1 tablespoon of dried herb or 3 tablespoons of fresh herbs. So like I said, that 1-to-3, 1-to-4 ratio is what you're looking for. So if you do a 1-to-1 dried or 3 or 4 fresh, so I need about 3 or 4 of these and then I would use about a cup of water that I would boil and brew up, stick these in a different cup, and then pour the boiled water on top of it and let it steep. Just let it kind of simmer in there and cover it up and just let it come to a cool, where it cools down in about 10 or 15 minutes. And then like I said, you're just pretty much letting it steep, and then you're going to strain it and then drink it. And this one's going to be like a mucinex type of leaf with this mullen leaf here. And the only difference is with the decoction is it's a lot stronger, and whereas you would do an infusion with soft plants or what would be considered weak plants that are fragile, you would do an infusion. A decoction would be more where you would stick it on continuous heat for about 20 minutes up to an hour, depending on what you're using. But this is for more of a hard, so you got soft or hard plants like roots, nuts and bulbs, and barks. All those you would do a decoction where you would cook it for 20 to 40 minutes and up to an hour sometimes. And you're gonna bring it to a boil for the decoction, and then just stick it on a super low temperature, but it's a continuous heat that you're looking for the decoction. And the decoction is actually going to be a lot more potent and stronger than an infusion. Okay? And so there's also an infusion, a decoction, and a tincture. And I'm not going to talk about tinctures in this video. I'm probably going to save it for down the road, but it's whenever you add in like an alcohol base for it and you're making a tincture. So those are all part of medicinal and herbology, so definitely worth researching. Alright, so I know this here is another little bitty plant, a fresh growth, but this is my challenge question to leave you with. What do you think this is? It's got a hairy stem and a real beautiful leaf structure. I mean, it's just gorgeous. The more you study plants, the more you just fall in love with them. It does have a rounded stalk, a rounded stem, so it's not a squared stem. Love to hear your thoughts. And this is all one stalk, which is really beautiful plant. So that's your question, that's your challenge. What do you think it is? Put it in the comment section below. And guys, I want to thank you for tuning in for another episode of Dirt Time Adventures. This is Block 9, Part 1. Part 2, we're going to be looking at animals. And going to be looking at primarily focusing on deer and bobcat. And deer because they're so abundant in this area, and there's a lot of animal sign for deer, but also bobcat because I have a full bobcat that I want to show you guys in my next video. So guys, keep it practical, primitive, and prepared.